Are we ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Hey, Tony, just wondering overall thoughts of obviously a great second quarter, but second half shutout. So what were your overall thoughts about the Rutgers game?
You know what? It's kind of a tale of two halves for us on the offensive side of the ball. Was happy with a lot of the stuff that we did in the first half, especially that second quarter. Hit a couple big plays, both for touchdowns. Overall, BP played his best game, making decisions, just being aggressive, throwing the football, making the throws, receiver making some plays, ran the football well, and then went into the second half. And you go back and look at it on film, our first three drives really got killed with some major penalties, and they were just some. I don't want to say fluke penalties, but just some penalties that we really could have prevented right there that happened. They killed all three of those drives and got the ball back on our fourth drive, and we were backed up and we were unsuccessful getting the ball out of that -1 position. And then we were into the last drive of the game. So the second half, really, I've never had one like go so fast as far as offensively, not really just, I mean, it was just a tale of two totally different halves right there, but very excited about what our guys did in the first half. They made the plays, they did everything we were talking about, and just really disappointed and down on what happened in that second half with killing those drives and not getting the opportunity to continue to do what we were doing in the first half.
Tony, you guys have had 3 points in the first quarter so far this year. Brett talked about this, how you guys have tried to address it. What are you seeing as the reasons behind some slow starts, and how do you address that?
You know what? We just keep talking about making plays and starting fast, and I can't put my thumb on it. I've been on teams before where you've had different issues, whether it be red zone, third down, first quarter points, second quarter, all this kind of stuff. And, it's a reality. So it is what it is. And we've got to do better. I've got to do better. We've got to do better as a staff. We've got to do better as an offense. And we talk about, getting points on the board early, getting out there and executing early, taking care of the football. And we just, it's something we got to do better at, obviously. But overall, we got to really, we're not going to sit there and just look at the first quarter and what we're doing points wise. It's what can we do throughout the whole game to make sure we give ourselves a chance to win the football game. And one of the things we talk about here is not losing games. And we talk about turnovers and mental errors and penalties. And we had 3 crucial penalties in that second half that killed us as far as our offense. And we got to clean those up, more important than anything.
And just one more, you had the final sequence there, Tony, like the last 3 plays. Can you take me through your ideas behind those plays and why they weren't successful?
Well, we had one run that was okay. Then we ran the ball on third down, and really if we executed the way we should on that third down play, it might be a 20, 30-yard game right there, but it wasn't. We didn't execute it well. We got into a 4th and 1. We had a 4th and 1 situation where we had a call. We felt like it was a really good call. We had gotten stopped earlier on a 3rd and 1 situation. We went with it. The corner kind of didn't play the way we thought, didn't come in as much as we thought he would. He made a great tackle and made a play. Now he comes in a little bit more like we anticipated. We get outside that guy, and all of a sudden we're going down the sideline, and everybody thinks it's the greatest call in the world. And it's not whether it's what we thought, it's what we felt at the time. We went with it. We spent a lot of time on it, and it didn't work out. So that's football. It happens that way sometimes. Looking back, obviously, I wish we would have maybe had a different call there, but that was the one that we felt was the call we needed to use at that time.
Thanks, Tony. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hey, Tony, thanks for your time.
Yep.
Statistically, Minnesota is the second best run defense in the Big Ten behind Wisconsin. After a couple of weeks, you faced Wisconsin 2 games ago. How do you just determine where you want to lean in on your strength running versus, their strength in run defense, and then maybe adapting as the game goes along?
Well, first of all, they're a really good defense and they're a good run defense, but, it's kind of complementary football with them. And you look at statistics, they can go a lot of different ways, but they run the football a lot on their offense. And a lot of times that'll determine the statistics on the defensive side of the ball. So that's something that you always got to look at, but they're a very good defense. They're big, they're physical, they're strong. They play a 4-down front. They're a kind of a base defense. They want to keep everything in front of you, not give up big plays. We've got to go out and be able to execute against them in the run and the pass. We've got to make sure we're getting the ball in the perimeter. We've got to build off what I feel like, and I just said earlier to Jeremy, I think was Brandon's best game by far, not even close. And if your quarterback's playing well, you got a chance. So, if we just look back to last week, if we continue to what we were doing in that second quarter and that first half right there, I feel like that game could totally be different last week. And we got to build on that. We got to take advantage of our receivers that are starting to make some plays and keep getting the ball to our running backs at the same time. So we got to keep running our offense and executing at a high level.
Been back to Minnesota since your time there, but how does it feel to be going back? Does it add anything for you in this ball game?
Yeah, not really. I mean, I'll have some family at the game. My two oldest kids live in the Twin Cities, and my in-laws live there, which will be awesome to maybe see them after the game. But you know, I've been doing this a long time. It's another Big Ten road game, is what it is. You know, other than the fact I've never been in that stadium was built after I left. I heard it's a nice stadium, but excited to just be on the road and get to play another Big Ten road game on our side of the division.
Hey, Tony, I kind of wanted to follow up on what Jeremy was kind of asking along the lines of struggling to score in the first quarter. In practice or in preparation, how are you trying to improve that this week?
You know, we talk about starting fast in practice. You know, we get out there early and get some scripted plays to where we're hitting on them in practice. And that's kind of a thing we're hitting right there. And you can look at the first quarter of that game, but I felt like if you look at the first half, what we did and a couple big plays and overall, I felt like, you know, we did what we needed to do. Now, it wasn't in the first quarter, but it was in the first half. And, you know, yeah, I'd like to score a whole lot of more points in the first quarter, I promise you. But I'm much more concerned about how many points we score over the 4 quarters and what ends up happening at the end result of the game.
And then to kind of follow up again, so I guess in the second quarter, you guys really started to move the ball. Is there a maybe grace period where it just takes the players understanding the flow of the game, you kind of getting into the flow of the game and figuring out what's working and what's not working based off of what opponents are putting on the field? If that makes sense.
I mean, not really, to be honest with you. You know, we had a great second quarter right there, and we had the football, and we controlled it, and we made some plays. The first quarter, if I remember correctly, I mean, I think they had one long drive there in the first quarter where they controlled the football, and sometimes that has to do with how many plays we run. Let's say we go out on our first drive and we have a 3 and out, and they control the football. Well, you know, the first quarter could almost be over. Well, then we get it, and 2 or 3 times in a row, we score 2 touchdowns. So, you know, you guys are talking about the first quarter, which is fine. You're totally right. We need to score more points there. But I look at it as more as the first half and the whole game right there. And, you know, I felt like our guys in the first half did exactly what we wanted them to do. We just came back in the second half and had 3 critical penalties that really hurt us.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Hey, Tony, I'm curious, what do you think clicked so well for Brandon on Saturday? And obviously it was his best game we've seen out of him this year.
You know, I don't know. And I've been talking not just to Brandon, but the whole offense about, guys, we're so close out there and we're so just close right there to all of a sudden a couple plays clicking and it's just going to start happening all the time. And what I do know is Brandon had his best week of practice last week, not even close. He was completely healthy. He was locked in. We even talked about the way he went through the walkthrough on Friday, how locked in he was. He went out there in pregame. I mean, it just felt different. And he went out and played a great football game. I mean, he made good decisions. He didn't put the ball in danger one time. He didn't turn it over, made a couple great throws, especially the touchdown throw to Isaiah, and just didn't have the opportunity to continue that in the second half because of what happened with the penalties. It continued then to last night. We had a night practice, and he came out and probably had one of the best practices he had all year. So, you know, I'm just hoping to keep riding that wave with him right there. And maybe it's just kind of all clicked for him. The receivers, I mean, you know, we're still real young into our offense. We're young at wide receiver. And all of a sudden, if, you know, things start clicking right now, it could totally change. So very excited about where he's at right now, what he did last week and where our guys are at. So we just got to do everything we can moving forward to score as many points as possible. But, you know, I'd love to score them all in the first quarter, but I'm more worried about how many we score in 4 quarters and what the end result is as far as the wins and losses.
With Brandon, that confidence, was it any, I mean, it's kind of hard to telegraph that as a coach into a player, right? But was there any signs that, hey, he might be starting to get his feet under him here a little bit and this turn could be happening? Or were you, I don't want to say caught off guard, but was it kind of a jolt for you guys?
No. And like I said, he really had his best week practice since I've been here. I mean, he practiced, he was sharp. He made good decisions with the football. He was getting on his front foot on all of his throws. He was making great decisions on time. I mean, it was just different last week and it just felt different out there. And I don't know if he's just finally gotten to a point where he's a little more comfortable, whatever it is, but it clicked a little bit different in practice all week. And that showed up on Saturdays. And Coach B talks about it all the time. You know, practice habits become game day realities. And his practice was really well last week and he played well on Saturday, especially in the first half.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Hi, Coach. A lot of praise for Brandon Peters, obviously, and well-deserved. But the reality is he only threw the ball a couple times in the second half. What went into that decision to kind of go away from the passing game? Was it just the flow of the game, or was it something you saw from the defense?
Well, I'm just going to go back to it again. If you go back and look at the film in the second half, we had 3 drives to start the second half that had critical penalties that put us in extreme long yardage situations that ended those drives. The next drive, we were on the -1 coming out, and we didn't successfully get it off the goal line. And then the next drive was our last drive of the game. I don't think we had the ball 18 plays in the second half. I don't know what it was exactly, but it was 49 overall. So it wasn't that we weren't trying to throw the ball in the second half. It's just with those 4 drives and where they were and the unique situations right there, we just didn't have the opportunity to do hardly any of the stuff that we were going to do in the second half. So it just very unique situations on what happened on those 3 drives, and then being backed up on the -1 on the 4th drive. And then the 5th drive was the last drive of the game.
I don't think I've ever seen a bigger difference between a running game in one game against Penn State and then struggling to run the ball this past week. Was it just what the defense was giving you, or did you see something in the offense that just wasn't clicking?
No, I would totally give credit to Rutgers. They played very hard up front. They moved around a lot. Our run game wasn't as successful as it was against Penn State, but you know what? I didn't think going into the Penn State game that all of a sudden we were going to run for 357 yards, but we did. And we went out there and we did what we needed to do. And then in the first half of the Rutgers game, we were doing what we needed to do. We just unfortunately didn't have the opportunity to continue that in the second half with the situations that arise because of those penalties. And we just got to clean up the penalties and make sure we stay out of those situations. Give Rutgers credit. They did a great job on defense. They made the plays on offense, and we came up a play or a drive short at the end.
Thanks, Coach.
Coach, it's kind of a complicated question, I guess, but you came from a conference last year where I just looked up the stats. I think there were only 4 defenses that held people under 400 yards a game, something like that. In the Big Ten, I think this year there's 12 of the 14 defenses that do. So in this brand of football, how does that change your approach to offense when you're facing a defense, probably a stout defense every week?
Well, it's totally different. I mean, and nothing against the Sun Belt, Conference USA, a couple of conferences I've been in, had a great time, loved it, some very good football teams, but you just do not face especially the front 7 that you face at this level. And in the Big Ten, you don't face the defensive linemen, you don't face some of the outside linebackers, the inside linebackers, and it just changes the game. And it's no different than when you move on and you go from, say, college into the NFL, and all of a sudden you're facing a whole different type of person up front as far as the front 4 and the people you got to deal with right there. And it can completely change what you can do on offense and how explosive you can be. You've got to be careful of pass rushers that in those conferences you might not face, but 1 or 2 guys in a season that you're really looking like, okay, we really got to pay attention to this guy. In this conference, I mean, every week you're facing 1 or 2 guys on the D line that you're like, we got to be careful in pass protection here, or this guy could change the game. So if that's what you're asking, I mean, that's the biggest difference, I think, in those in Conference USA / Sun Belt, and all of a sudden playing in the Big Ten. I mean, that's the biggest difference on the defensive side.
Yeah, and there's also the number of possessions. Obviously Big Ten offenses are grinded out, keep it for 35 minutes. Does that change your approach at all when there's, maybe less time you're going to have the ball or anything like that?
Well, it might change the amount of plays that you carry. What you're planning on doing with your possessions. How many plays you're going to get in. I mean, you're probably, a lot of times you're limited on the explosive plays. You might, I've seen some of those games and watch them on TV, and you see somebody getting 8, 9, 10 explosive plays in a game. And if we can get 4 to 5, that's a great game right there. So it's just different. It's a different level of ball. It's a different level of talent that you're going against, and it creates different type of problems that you got to deal with. And you got to make sure that you don't lose football games, and especially let some of those really good defensive linemen just create havoc in your backfield.
Thanks.
Tony, how do you feel about your depth at wide receiver, maybe compared to, week 1, in the sense of maybe trying to feeling better about Brian Hightower being able to contribute, guys like Miles Scott, maybe getting Deuce back healthy? Do you feel like there's a bigger group than the obvious three of Isaiah, Casey, and Donnie at this point?
Absolutely. I think the three you're talking about right there is we're starting to get Deuce back to where he can take some snaps. All of a sudden you add Pat Bryant, you add Miles Scott to the rotation, some young guys that moving forward should be very good receivers here for many years. And all of a sudden they're starting to get to where they're understanding what's going on, and they can get in there and take a lot of different snaps and just not have a few plays that they're specifically running. And then, as Hightower gets more healthy and he can get back in there. So you're right. Our depth at wide receiver right now, we got a big pool that we can play with, a lot more than we did at the beginning of the year, which always helps because you need that in November. I mean, you got to have that kind of stuff at the end.
Thanks, Tony.
Good. Okay.